We will take up our first bill of the day, Senator Albright and LB282. Senator, welcome back to the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Lathrop and members of the Judiciary Committee. For the record, my name is Joni Albright. It's J-O-N-I, Albright, A-L-B-R-E-C-H-T, and I represent Legislative District 17 in Northeast Nebraska, which includes Wayne, Thurston, and Dakota counties. LB282 is a simple bill. It closes a loophole in the Nebraska law. Currently, it is against the law for anyone in Nebraska to present materials to children considered obscene or harmful, except in schools or libraries. In Nebraska elementary schools through high school and libraries, it currently is lawful to present criminal obscenity to any age of school children. It makes no sense that schools and libraries of all places should be given a pass to expose children to material the law already would recognize as criminally obscene to children. Last year, we created legislation with LB 1040 and 881 to protect children from being groomed by an adult. This bill simply continues to close the loophole, prosecuting any adult in K through 12 or library setting who seeks to groom a child through the use of obscenity. And LB 282 just says the same obscenity standard applies to everyone in Nebraska, no exceptions. LB 282 does not change a thing about the definition of obscenity as applied under Nebraska law. Whatever would have been considered obscene or harmful as to children previously or not obscene remains the same. The Nebraska state statute describes, without using the word obscene, what sexually explicit materials are harmful to minors and currently cannot be presented to children is in the Nebraska state statute 28-808 and section 28-807, which defines harmful to minors. These Nebraska laws have not changed in 44 years, since 1997. LB 282 simply closes the loophole. No one is allowed to show material to this. No one is allowed to show material the state would define as obscene to a minor. Thank you for listening, and I respectfully ask for you to advance LB 282 out of committee and onto the floor of the legislature. Okay,
thanks for that introduction. I do not see any questions at this point.
Thank you.
You will stay to close?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks, Senator Albright. We will begin with proponent testimony. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Lathrop and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Matt Heffron. I'm an attorney in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm also senior counsel with the Thomas More Society, a nonprofit public interest law firm headquartered in Chicago with an Omaha office. As Senator Albright said, LB 282 just says the same obscenity standard applies to everyone, no exceptions. It closes a loophole, a long-time loophole in Nebraska law, and if I were sitting where you are, I would wonder how did that loophole get there? And so one of the handouts I'm giving you is an analysis of the legislative history of LB 38, which is the section now in Nebraska's code, which is 28-815. And it's a little complicated. LB 38 was in 1977. It was recodification and revision of the code. They discussed the obscenity statutes, but there was also a passage of the same obscenity statutes in 1974, and that was LB 815. And at that time, it's expressly stated in the legislative history of this statute that this obscenity exemption, which applies to schools and to libraries, was intended only for university level, graduate level, and art school sort of thing. They did not ever discuss allowing it for K through 12 schools, and in fact, all of the discussion of this bill was to the contrary, and that is that LB 815 was primarily, as it says in there, in fact, it was Senator DeCamp who said that obscenity and pornography as they relate to minors is the thrust of this bill, protecting minors. That was the thrust of all of the obscenity statutes in 1974 and 1977. And in fact, they would not have also intentionally given an exemption to allow minors to have obscenity in the schools. It was just a different time. No one even thought about it, wasn't contemplated. And to further up on that it was simply an oversight and mistake. We have Senator Pat Bendetti, who will be testifying right after me, former Senator Pat Bendetti, if you may remember him, who was there in the 1970s sitting in your very same seats, and he'll say the same thing. I also gave you another handout explaining obscenity law. I will say this, lots of lawyers on this committee, you're thinking back about obscenity law. In this case, it's only there to answer your questions because LB 282 does not have a thing to do with changing Nebraska's obscenity law. So if anyone comes up here after me and starts saying, what about this piece of obscenity, what about this, would teachers be, or librarians be liable? This law, this LB 282 doesn't change a thing. They should go to 808 and 807 if they want to know whether or not there's obscenity involved. And I can explain that further if you have questions. Finally, as far as if there need to be any assurances for teachers, what does this do to us? It doesn't do anything as far as teachers are concerned. They're just held to the very same standards as everyone else in the state. And the majority of teachers, quite honestly, will want nothing to do with presenting obscenity in schools. It dovetails nicely with your bill from last year, and that is this only handles the road. In fact, I'm married to a teacher, and you'll hear several other teachers testify. This is only to sort out the roads that might want to present obscenity to schools, or obscenity in schools. And I
have to enforce that red light.
Very good.
Because there's a lot of people, I think, that want to be heard today. Any questions for Mr. Heffron? I don't see any. Thanks for being here. Good to see you again. Next proponent. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Judiciary Committee. The information that is being passed, is this going to be automatically put into the record?
No, you'll have to read it if you want that particular information provided.
Can I request that this be put into the record without touching on every paragraph?
It will be an exhibit, pardon me.
Okay.
It will be an exhibit to the record.
Okay.
We have so many rules right now, it's hard for me
I
to
understand.
make a representation.
I believe my vitae is pretty much self-explanatory, and I know we're limited in terms of time, but I remember in my late 20s when I became a state senator, we met with
We're going to have you
I'm sorry.
spell your name for us. Give your name and spell it.
Sure.
Please.
Pat Bendetti, P-A-T-V-E-N-D-I-T-T-E, 1235 Park Wild Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. That's just a few blocks from the old market in Omaha's Little Italy. I've been a resident there for 75 years. I remember my first couple of days becoming a state senator, we met with Gene Mahoney. And one of the things that he said was, you're a state senator from 8 in the morning until 5 o'clock. After 5 o'clock, go home and be with your family. Well, that kind of resonated with me. And I was getting an inordinate amount of time away from my family, and that was kind of a wake-up call. So I made an effort to go home and spend more time with the family, and I had a couple of young boys that came into the family, one of which was interested in music, another one interested in baseball. So my wife took my son Tony and encouraged him in music. And I took the baseball side and taught my son how to pitch with both arms. And he became a Major League Baseball pitcher, the only active pitcher in baseball today that can pitch with both arms. He was drafted by the Yankees and spent time with Toronto, Oakland, Seattle. But I think it's important because I bring my childhood back to life today. And for some reason, I was with my grandparents who came from Italy. And her son was Judge Sam Caniglia, who was a district court judge in Omaha. Every single morning, he would stop and visit his mother before he went to the courthouse. And as I reflect back on those days, I remember my uncle, who lived across the street, was all Big Six in 1949 and 50 for the University of Nebraska in wrestling. And my childhood, of course, with the Benedictine nuns in grade school and the Dominican nuns at the high school level, taught me the values that I live by today. And after completing my undergraduate work, I started teaching at Westside High School in Omaha, Nebraska. And we had the modular system then, and it just came into being. And kids were in class only half a day. And the rest of the time, they were expected to be in the IMCs. And that was a tough time because many young people, when they had free time, they didn't want to go to the Instructional Materials Center. They had other interests, but as time went on, we left the modular system and went to a regular school day. But again, I just want to reiterate a couple of things with regard to the code. Yes, when I was here, we went through the entire code, and obviously there were some errors made. And the reason why I am here today is to request the committee to consider those requests that have been made so far by Matt and myself. And the amendment 28815 is needed to close a loophole which the Nebraska legislature in the 1970s did not intend. And I hope in your wisdom you will correct our drafting mistake of over 40 years ago.
Okay, appreciate that. I was fortunate enough to try cases in front of Judge Caniglia. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man.
Thanks, Steve.
And after he retired, he was up in the juvenile court,
That's
basically
right.
volunteering.
That's exactly right,
A
Steve.
perfect fit, too.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Senator Geist has a question for us.
Yes.
I'm over here.
Okay,
Yes, thank you for your testimony. And as I was reading through your written testimony, you indicated that you were part of, as you were saying, rewriting the code, and especially as it has to do with obscenity. And so the loophole that is being talked about in LB282, can you speak to whether that was the intent of your committee or your rewriting, or if that's something that was not foreseen?
I think the latter. I don't believe we had foreseen that to be an issue.
Okay. And also, I'd further ask, in considering things that are taught in schools now, such as sex education, would that fall under your concern of obscenity, or is that how you see it as part of a curriculum that's needed in schools now? Would you respond to whether that's encased in 282, in your opinion?
You know, if I may, Senator, I would like to draw a parallel to that, if I may. And I was invited to a health consortium at Creighton University, and this was in the latter 60s. And it had to do with alcoholism. And I was one of many teachers and of course, parents that were there. And it was suggested by the committee that we know that young people are going to drink. So let's tell them how much they should drink. And right away, I came and expressed my concerns, and I said, if we're going to give a recipe to all of our high school students as to how much they can drink, I says that I want to hear that recipe. And they were recommending that we tell young people that it's okay to drink, but don't drink to excess. Well, what's that recipe? Young people today don't understand that. And I think the same thing when it comes to sex education, Senator. Wow. I look back at my years and sex was not mentioned during my elementary years at St. Philomena Grade School, Cathedral High School, all nuns then and priests. And to be honest with you, sex education wasn't an issue. I've been out of education since 2000, and what they're doing today, I really don't know. But our young people are subjected to just about anything when it comes to sex education. And I just hope that when we involve sex education into our curriculum, that it's in the best interest of their lifetime of living.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you for being here. It's good to see you. Next proponent.
Good morning, Chairman Lathrop and
Good morning.
members of the committee. My name is Mary McAllister, M-A-R-Y, M-C, capital A-L-I-S-T-E-R. I'm an attorney with the Child and Parental Rights Campaign. I reside in Virginia, and as part of my work, I did a lot of research on obscenity, the effect of obscenity on children, and their brains and all of that. And I've been working with folks all around the country to try to repeal laws like this that, as former Senator Bendetti said, were brought in not intending to do what they're doing now. And so this is a very critical bill to protect children and also parental rights. And we're not talking here about censorship. I know that there might be people, opponents, who come in later and saying we're trying to censor. That's not it at all. We're talking about protecting children. Now, obscenity is not protected by the First Amendment, as all of us who are lawyers know, and it's one of the defined exemptions from it. And we know obscenity is obviously harmful to everyone, but we're talking here about young, undeveloped minds. We know children's brains do not mature until their mid-20s. And so the courts, federal courts, have long acknowledged that our laws should provide children with greater protection from obscenity even than is provided to adults. And so Nebraska does that, provides a greater protection with statute 28808, which provides criminal sanctions for disseminating materials that are harmful to minors. And these appropriately recognize that materials which might not be viewed as obscene to mature adults pose harm to the immature and developing minds of children, and therefore should be subject to greater restrictions. And so these restrictions are not censorship, but an exercise of our duty as responsible adults to protect the innocence and health of children. The exemption as it exists is actually a derogation of the duty to protect the innocence and health of Nebraska's children. And it's a breach of the trust of parents who entrust their children to the schools to gain knowledge and skills that will help them become productive citizens. They don't expect they're going to be introduced to materials that steal their innocence and damage their health and well-being. And what they're saying in the exemption as it exists now is they're saying, well, if you slap an education label on it, then even though no one else in the state could provide these materials to children, the teachers and the librarians can. And that just is a very harmful thing, because the children's undeveloped brains are not able to process these materials. And these are not like English lessons or math lessons where you're giving them facts. These materials evoke emotions and sensations that the children can't process. They don't know what this is. So they have these sensations. So then they're not able to focus on what they need to do.
Okay. Let's see if there's questions. Senator Geist.
Yes, thank you. Is it your opinion that, now I've seen some of the images that are available here locally, can an appropriate sex education be taught without the use of these images?
Yes. I mean, and it was for years. I know, my experience and experience of most of us, you can teach human anatomy, human physiology, the differences between male and female, and the process of reproduction, without providing graphic illustrations, without providing discussions of various types of sexual activity that people engage in and how they engage in it. And
what would you say about art and how, I think many of these images are cased in, well, this is art. What would your response as an attorney for children's rights, what would your response to that be?
Well, indeed, some of it is art. I mean, you think of Michelangelo's David, for example.
Would you call that pornographic?
No. It's simply a representation of human anatomy done in a beautiful way that's not... what happens is it's what's the intent behind the image. And if the intent behind... Why are you showing this image? If you're showing a photograph of Michelangelo's David... You're saying, here is a sculptor who is very, very talented, and he offered a very realistic piece of art representing the human body, and it's a beautiful thing. But if you're presenting a picture of two people engaging in sexual activity that may be very well artistically done, may be beautiful art, that is going another step beyond. That is not required to be given to young children. I mean, certainly, and LB282 would not affect that in terms of the university level, where people are adults, and then they, certainly they have the capability of processing the image and understanding that it's art versus pornography. Children can't make that differentiation. They need us as adults and teachers, authority figures, to do that for them. And so if that gets confused, then the children don't know really how to handle what they're seeing.
Thank you.
Senator McKinney.
Thank you. How do we prepare our students for, life after high school and school if we shield them in a box and don't get them to understand the realities of having unprotected sex?
Well, I don't think we need to put them in a box, and I don't think we need to shield them from reality, but we have to always ask ourselves, with the various age levels, what is a kindergartner able to understand? What is a sixth grader able to understand? And you can certainly, and I think what you need to do is you focus on the relationship aspect of it. You don't need to describe in detail, for example, how does a person get AIDS, and go into detail of the act that they engage in that makes them at risk for that. But you can say, when you're in a relationship with someone and you need to protect your health, you need to protect yourself, you need to make choices that are wise. Making wise choices is really the key, because you're asking these children, and the part of their brain that can analyze risks and process a risk and risk-taking doesn't develop until their 20s. So if you're asking a 15-year-old to not take risks, you have to be very focused. And so what you need to do is you need to say, you need to make wise choices, you need to talk to trusted adults or friends who are wise in these issues, and to seek counsel from your parents, or counselors or whoever is in your life that can advise you on what these wise choices look like. And that doesn't need to be the school's role. They can certainly have overviews of we need to make wise choices in our physical lives, in our physical bodies. We need to make wise choices in whom we share ourselves with.
Okay. I guess, you know, through my whole life, going through elementary, I don't remember ever being taught sexual education in elementary, not once. In middle school and high school, I remember it, but I maybe they started doing it, but I don't recall it ever happening. What about, you know, education around, you know, rape and sexual assault and looking for the signs and educating our students on, you know, how to, you know, see the signs, and if a student is being manipulated, being exposed to some of this education could be helpful for them to, you know, say, hey, this has happened to me.
Again, I don't think you need to go into the detail. I think you can, again, engage with relationship education. You can engage in, you know, good touch, bad touch. You don't need to go into great detail. If somebody shows you something or touches you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable and which makes you feel like it's not right, then you go to your parent, you go to your teacher, you go to your counselor, and you say, this is the activity, or this is something that happened to me, I'm uncomfortable with it. And the teachers in class can talk about that, but they don't have to talk about and even show photographs or pictures of the activity, because that itself triggers. If there's a child who has been sexually assaulted, and you show them pictures, even if it's not somebody being assaulted, quote unquote, but you're showing them explicit images of people engaging in these activities, that in and of itself can trigger these children harmfully. And so it has to be a balance of informing the children about being in charge of their own bodies and not being told to do something that is uncomfortable to them, that makes them scared, that makes them feel bad. And if anybody does that, you need to talk to a trusted adult about it.
Okay. I just simply don't ever remember seeing people engaged in the activity during my sex ed classes. I remember seeing photos of, like, you know, individuals with STDs and things like that, but maybe they started teaching it since I've been out of school. Maybe. I guess the last thing is, even different from my childhood, our children, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, are exposed to a lot more than us. These phones and the internet and all these apps and things like that are exposing children to a lot of things. In my opinion, I don't know, I would be interested in your response. Do you think it's better to educate our kids on what they're being exposed to, or to not talk about it at all?
I think, again, school does not need to be the place, another place where they're getting these images. Yes, unfortunately, on television, on their phones, on the internet, on social media, they're going to see these images. But a school is a very different environment, and it's especially a problem because children are told when you go to school, you know, you are to respect your teacher, and you're to listen to your teacher. And so if you have a teacher who is providing graphic information that, okay, yeah, they could go get it on the porn sites, but you have a teacher telling you, and you'll hear from some other testifiers here that is happening, then you have a teacher who's an authority figure, just like your priest or your rabbi or your pastor or your mom or dad, telling you this is something that's okay to do. This is something that people do, and you should enjoy it, and that is being told to kids, and we have people who will tell you that. Then that just adds to it, and that oftentimes what they hear in school is what will drive them to go looking around on the internet if they haven't already, but it will drive them. So we don't need to add to. School doesn't need to be a place where we're adding to the harm. School needs to be a place where they learn how to be productive citizens. They learn math, and they learn science, and they learn English, and they learn history, and they learn what it means to be a well-rounded, well-educated person who can contribute to their community. And we just need to refocus on that part of school.
Thank you.
I do have a question from Senator Pansy Brooks, and I'm going to try to paraphrase it.
Okay.
Do you believe that the obscenity laws, as we define them in Nebraska, are violated in a high school that is teaching curriculum the high school has approved?
In some cases, yes.
Is it the goal of this bill to stop sex education in K through 12 settings?
No.
Is it the goal of the bill to stop sex education in K through 12 that uses images to assist in the sex education class?
If they are images that meet the definition of harmful to minors under Nebraska law, just like anyone else. I mean, any other person, if you invited children over to your home, people would not do this, obviously, unless they had a serious issue. But if you were to invite the neighborhood children into your home to watch pornography, well, certainly that's something that you would be prosecuted for in Nebraska. So why would a teacher...
I just want to make sure you're not giving me long answers, because there's a half hour.
Right, I understand.
And
yes.
I see people sitting behind you that still want to be heard, so I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to burn the half hour with one person. And let me see if Senator has any other questions. Do you think, this is from Senator Pansy Brooks, do you think that pictures or images of reproductive organs would be considered obscene? What about anatomy models of reproductive organs as examples, anatomical models to be used for condom demonstration or demonstration of self-examination to determine cancer?
Well, the condom demonstration is a different issue, but generally, no, as I indicated. This is not meant to affect factual and scientific information about this is a male, this is a female, these are their reproductive organs, and these are the types of diseases that can happen or whatnot. But just factual scientific information that isn't, as the obscenity definition states, isn't meant to prompt any kind of sensations, but is just meant to provide factual information.
So when I look at the definition of harmful to minors, among the elements is lacking in serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value to minors. If someone uses images for purposes of sex ed in a high school, for example, doesn't that necessarily mean that it is not harmful to minors because it is offered for a scientific value to minors?
That would depend. Again, you would have to look at the materials and make the determination as to whether this is scientifically valid and does not promote the prurient interest, as it says earlier on,
right, but
is simply educational. It's simply saying this is...
One more question for you, and that is, do you believe this bill will have the effect of chilling sex education in the high school setting?
Only to the extent that the education incorporates images and text that violates Section 28807.
Okay. I do not see any other questions. Thank you for being here.
Great,
Appreciate
thank you.
your testimony. Next proponent. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Lathrop and the Judiciary Committee. I'm honored to be here. My name is Teresa, Teresa Davidson, Davidson, and I have been a pediatric nurse practitioner for 26 years. I've been working in the anti-human trafficking movement for the past 8 years, first founding a nonprofit called Chains Interrupted in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, then becoming the nation's 5th anti-human trafficking coordinator within a hospital. In October 2019, I was appointed by former President Trump to serve on a federal public-private partnership to end human trafficking advisory council and served to advise federal agencies on issues regarding human trafficking. I have been impressed with the strong stand Nebraska has taken to protect your children, especially against human trafficking. Attorney General Doug Peterson is very committed to fighting this crime and speaks out strongly for prevention. I have partnered both with Nebraska's visionary Human Trafficking Task Force and with the Nebraska Coalition. I watched you pass LB282, introduced by Senator Lathrop, unanimously last year. Being exposed to sexually explicit material places children at risk from all kinds of predators, which is why it is critical that a loophole which allows obscene material to be provided to children be closed. Children's minds are not developed enough to handle sexually explicit images. If seeing an image is distressing to them, their brain goes through a complicated process and releases chemicals, including cortisol. Over time, distress can actually kill brain cells and disrupt neural connections. Depression, anxiety, risk-taking behavior, inability to learn, and poor decision-making are just a few of the results, which are all risk factors for becoming a victim of human trafficking. During my work at Mercy Medical Center over the past 2.5 years, I have received over 153 referrals of sex trafficking. Of those groomed at a young age, over 90% started with being exposed to obscene material. In fact, using obscene material is used in many of the control tactics employed by traffickers. I cannot begin to tell you how experiencing human trafficking destroyed each of their lives. One survivor friend of mine has a metal plate in her jaw from it being broken so many times. She struggled with infertility due to all the sexual assaults and still has nightmares to this day, 10 years after she escaped the life. She can't watch certain movies or be out after dark. She has panic attacks and struggles with self-esteem and relationships. I can tell you hundreds of stories just like her, but since I only have a few minutes here today, I've included 2 letters from survivors of sex trafficking in your packets. We must do everything we can to prevent this. Please continue Nebraska's strong leadership in fighting human trafficking and protect Nebraska's children from exposure to obscene material. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Senator Geist.
Thank you for your testimony. I've seen some of these images that are available to children, and I would contend that they're so beyond what's needed for sex education, for history, for art. Have you in your state, it's hard to make it the same, but is there a line that is appropriate for students? And how do you determine where that line is?
That's an excellent question, because I think that we can all agree that children need age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate, healthy sex education. We all can agree on that. So where is the line? Who determines that line? I can tell you that in my experience with human sex trafficking survivors, that most of them have started being groomed by, the obscene material. And even children that have seen obscene material, they develop that anxiety, that fear, that curiosity, and they go exploring. And that gets them into trouble, especially online, when they're trying to find out answers. The FBI is estimating hundreds of thousands of predators online at any given moment, just trolling for our kids that are looking for answers and looking for ways out of precarious situations. So I know I didn't answer that question.
We're not talking about the things would say that I've seen. I mean, we are talking about those things. We're not talking in this bill about attacking the ability of an instructor to present to their students in a factual way about anatomy, about art, about reproductive health or biology. We're talking about things that fall far outside the norm.
Correct.
Is that your...
That is my understanding of this bill.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Just one moment. I have a question from Senator Pansy Brooks. Here is the question for you. I, Senator Pansy Brooks, have worked on human trafficking bills. Never once has it been intimated that a hideous practice begins in schools. To the contrary, schools use age-appropriate programs to teach and protect all children in Nebraska. Are you saying that schools are the reason that kids are trafficked?
No, that's a great question, and I'm glad to clarify that answer. No, I'm not. There are three main players in the game of human trafficking. There are victims, there are buyers, and there are traffickers. Obscene material has been used within all three of them into, and can be used to groom all three players into a human trafficking situation. Starting with victims, we've discussed how that if they're seeing something that's inappropriate for their age, they have that anxiety, that distress that can cause them to have the vulnerabilities to be groomed. But traffickers often will use a fake boyfriend or girlfriend relationship to persuade them into doing a sex act that then they videotape or photograph without their consent and blackmail them into becoming a victim of human trafficking.
You don't think all this starts with sex ed in schools?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean...
I have to tell you that I'm trying to make sure that we are respectful for other people.
Yes, sir.
And we have, with just a few people, gone so far that we're out of time for proponents. And I regret that. But that's the questions that were asked and the answers that were given. And so unless there are other questions for this testifier, and I see none, thank you for being here. I know you've traveled some distance to share your views, and we appreciate that. We will now take opponent testimony. Anyone here to speak in opposition?
Can I ask you a question? If I am not able to testify, can I please turn my materials with my testimony in?
We can log it in as an exhibit. I apologize, we have these rules about what we can accept as written testimony. We can now move to...
Excuse me. I'd like to know why was there a time limit put on our testimony? I understand you all have to have bills all day, but I don't feel like that it's fair that you all are limiting us to, those who want to speak to 30 minutes. I've never seen this before done, so and y'all may have done it before, but I just think that on this type of issue, and as important as it is, it should not have had a time limit on it.
Well, I can't take... First of all, this has been the practice in this committee all year. It has frequently been the practice with Judiciary Committee because of the volume of bills. My first 2 years down here, we didn't have to because our bills were heard in the afternoon and we could go till 11 o'clock.
So, with all due respect, we have human trafficking going on, and this legislative bill that Senator Albright has brought forward is to close the door and gaps on teachers who would be pedophiles or even support groups like the North American Man-Boy Love Association. We have to protect our kids. You, Senator, know in the state of Nebraska, we already have had teachers who were arrested because what were they doing? Preying upon the children. Sir, this is one of the most important bills, LB282. So I would cry out. And myself, as being a victim of pornography and cutting off my freedom of speech, this greatly hurts me and it leaves a horrible imprint on the state of Nebraska. I ask and I plead, please, whatever your rules are, may there be an exemption this day.
I have no control over how long people took to answer questions before. That's the problem. when answers take up 5 minutes, then that's time that other people don't have.
You already know.
You may
know
submit-
How, you already know how hearings go. So to say that you don't know how long people will take up time, I think is a little bit unfair. Again, you know, with this being an important bill, I'm going to respect what you all say, but I just want to voice.
I appreciate that. Understand that I have 3 bills scheduled this morning because we have, and it has been necessary to put time limits in place. And I have to observe those because everybody who brings a bill has a bill that's important to them. And everybody who comes to testify. And I said, I was very clear with the rules.
But our school,
If you can trust
still
us,
need to be
pressure on our
addressed.
teachers.
Please. I understand your passion for the issue. It's evident in the people who have testified. We'll go on to opponent testimony at this time.
Good morning, Chairman Lathrop and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Hunter Traynor, Huntertraynor. I'm a second-year law student at the College of Law, a law clerk at the Rembolt-Lutke Law Firm, and a registered lobbyist before the Nebraska Legislature. I'm here today on behalf of the Nebraska Library Association and will be speaking in opposition to LB282. Today I will discuss 2 reasons for why this bill should not be advanced. 1, it runs counter to the important Nebraskan ideal of local control. And 2, it would unnecessarily curtail the discretion librarians need to successfully do their jobs. I will consider these reasons in order. Local libraries across Nebraska are governed by boards that are comprised of community members. These boards often oversee the policies and procedures that guide librarians in picking materials for our state's local libraries. Analogously, Nebraska school libraries are subject to the oversight of school boards. It is our belief that library boards and school boards are better forums for concerned parents than our courts of law. Many concerns do not even reach these oversight boards. For example, local libraries have processes by which parents can share their concerns and work with their librarian to reach a solution. These processes promote community and transparency and education. Local control allows librarians to meet the needs of their communities and respond swiftly to any suggestions. Secondly, LB282 would make librarians' jobs prohibitively difficult. There are a lot of books in this world, and librarians sift through them to keep their libraries up to date and engaging. Libraries also manage electronic resources with even larger scopes. These tasks are hard enough without the looming fear of an impending lawsuit that a school district or a municipality would ultimately foot the bill for. Librarians are not lawyers. However, this bill will require librarians to proceed as though they are. My testimony is centered on the concerns of Nebraska's libraries. LB282 also impacts teachers, and I suspect educators are sharing concerns that parallel my comments. In summary, this bill would supplant community solutions with costly, tedious litigation. As a result, librarians will have to make judgments on issues that have, for years, confounded even great attorneys. I urge your opposition. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Any questions for this testifier? I see none. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for hearing me out.
Anyone else here to speak in opposition? Anyone else here are you here to speak in opposition?
I wasn't, but I am now.
Okay.
For the play, I thought it was one out, but I can do that.
Yeah, just come on up and let's,
Adam Downs, ADAMDOWNS. And listening to this and listening to a lot of the reasons, a lot of this screams to me that we don't trust teachers
We're not going to trust teachers, and we're not going to trust the teacher's curriculum that is being used. You know, there are standards of education that are used at that local level, as that was just mentioned. And I think that's important to recognize. I also want to tell a sort of story from, I did not grow up in Nebraska, I grew up in Virginia, and I did a lot of theater at that time. And I participated in a one-act play festival. It's actually, I know we have the International Thespian Festival is here every year too, but I did a one-act competition, and this was a play that was written by a teenager, and it depicted 3 stories of teenagers who had teenage pregnancies, including one with an instance of rape, and there was a rape scene in that play, and it was done tastefully and tactfully. We won at a regional level and performed at the state level with it. At the state level, we were told by the judges that the content was inappropriate for children and was not too adult for them, for us. But this was a play written by a teenager, performed by teenagers about teenage pregnancy. This bill, I fear, would lead to things like that being excluded, right? And powerful messages that to help prohibit and prevent these things. I fear that that's what will happen with this bill, is that it's going to become very subjective into that classroom as opposed to, and those activities at school, as opposed to trusting those teachers and trusting the education standards that are out there. And I understand, I heard the concerns about trafficking and pedophile teachers, and yes, that is a problem, and there are laws to address that. That is illegal and not okay, right? Putting restrictions in this way, it could be detrimental, I feel, in promoting an education about what's actually happening, what these teenagers are actually doing. And I also want to echo just the sentiments that were said earlier about the library. In the wide range of materials that are available at a public library, and censoring, I know this is not about censoring, but that really is sort of pulling back and saying, hey, this person is researching sexual abuse. Oh, sorry, at the library you cannot find this information because you are a teenager and we can't share this with you. So I think there's a lot of issues with this, so I stand in opposition to it. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to have you step over there and fill your sheet out and provide it to the page. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition to LB 282? Anyone here to speak in the neutral capacity?
Hello, my name is Gwen Easter, Gweneaster. I'm with Safe Haven Community Center and Safe Haven Early Childhood Preschool Education Academy. I'm not against sex education, but I am here today to ask you all to consider what's being said here. As a child care provider, most child care providers provide education services and work with infants through 13 years of age. We are not allowed in our centers to use certain materials to educate our young people in the areas of, when we talk about their bodies and these types of things. It's prohibited for use. There are a lot of providers who have degrees. Some have experience working with children from 1 year to 40 years, and they're not allowed to use materials to educate their children. So I don't see what's the difference from everyone else having to obey the laws than from the schools having to obey the same type of laws. And we do know that there is certain materials being used in the school systems that is obscenity. And I say that because I attended a training in Kearney, Nebraska, and I don't have the materials here with me because I was told that we can't bring that type of stuff. But some of the books that were used, there were teachers there were nurses there were, and these materials were being used, and some of them was very disturbing. And some of the materials that's being used in schools is very disturbing. So we're not going to pretend like, certain materials are not being used. Like I said, I'm not against sex education, but we do need to protect our most vulnerable children from being exposed to things that they should not be exposed to. Parents should always have the right to decide what is provided in a teaching aspect to their children. And the schools, again, there are teachers who may not want to present certain materials to children. So I'm just asking the same that we've been told in our trainings, you cannot teach certain things to our children, then they should be having to hold the same type of standard. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else here in the neutral capacity?
My name is Amber Parker, A-M-B-E-R, last name Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R. I want this message to go around this nation. This is what's happening, our freedom of speech being cut off, even to protect our children in our public schools. There are good teachers. What we want to do with LB282, Senator Albright, thank you for being brave. I cannot believe the pushback to stop sex trafficking, from grooming sex traffickers who would choose to be teachers, to come in with an intent to groom our children. I want to let you guys know there's an organization. They refer to themselves as NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association. I'd encourage you to go and look on their website, but I will warn you that the FBI will probably be tracking you on this. I'm here today to address the Board of Education will finally fire a Bronx High School teacher who openly advocates sex between men and boys. 7 years after he was removed from the classroom with pay, the Post had learned. State arbitrator Thomas Rinaldo upheld board disciplinary charges against 60-year-old Peter Meltzer, a teacher for 37 years and a leader of the North American Man-Boy Love Association. The 93-page ruling dated last Saturday and obtained by the Post yesterday said Meltzer's association with the pro-pedophile group made him unfit to be in contact with children. He edited the group's newsletters and helped set policy promoting child pornography and abolishing age sex laws. What LB282 would do is close the loopholes for people that would want to prey upon children in our classrooms. And I want to give you an example. If a man came in who was a part of the North American Man-Boy Love Association, and with the current exemption the way it is in schools and libraries, that man could easily show a picture of oral sex and talk to the student under a guise of something of education in this. But what we don't understand is that they're preying upon them to try to connect with them in a sexual way, as hormones go a lot with teenagers, because they want to have some type of sexual relationship with them. LB282, and I count on Patty Pansing Brooks' vote to get this out, as she's been an advocate to fight against sex traffickers. This bill needs to get out. And this is showing that the state of Nebraska is saying we are not allowing any pedophiles or sex traffickers as teachers in this state to groom children with obscene materials. This LB282 is closing that loophole. Furthermore, I would even ask that an amendment would be added that would state in the state of Nebraska that the North American Man-Boy Love Association, any members to that, or any pedophile group cannot be teachers in the state of Nebraska.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Anyone else here? Is there anyone here to testify in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, Senator Albright, you may close. This bill has generated 101 position letters, 92 of them in support and 9 of them in opposition. There is also the following written testimony provided this morning by Todd, I'll spell the last name, Schlechte, with the Academic Freedom Coalition as an opponent. Spike Eichholt with the ACLU of Nebraska is an opponent. Meg Mekalachek from Planned Parenthood North Central States has also provided written testimony in opposition, and Jenny Benson with the NSCA is also provided written testimony in opposition. They will be part of the record. Senator Albright, you may close.
Thank you, Senator Lathrop, and the Judiciary Committee for your patience here and understanding. I know that, there are a lot of issues here, but it is certainly not my intent not to have sex education. If school boards are the ones that decide the criteria, the curriculum for that particular issue at school, then they'll know what they can do and what they can't do. I'm not here to take anything under, like a teacher down by any means, but if a teacher is showing inappropriate content to a child, K through 12, that's why this is written. It was in 1977. That's a long time ago. We didn't have computers. And with libraries today, I had one of our folks from the press come to me as soon as I introduced this and said, my wife's a teacher. She works in the library, or she knows the people that go into the library at night, that they open it up to the public, and they actually get to go on these sites and look at pornography. I said, well, how could that happen in a school setting that you knowingly know that people are looking at that on computers that we supply them? We put the cost into these computers that are in libraries, and things like that could be happening. I just want to say this obscenity is all about catching that person that shouldn't be doing what they shouldn't be doing in a criminal activity. That's what we're looking at here. We're not looking to get our teachers in trouble or our librarians, for crying out loud. This is about having a safe place for our children to be. What happens at home on their devices, what happens, whatever they want to explore outside of schools is completely not our business. Our business is to take care of the children, the families, and our community, and keep them safe from others.
Senator Albright, I have a question for you.
Yep.
In light of this, the direction this hearing is taken. This is about sex ed. I don't think anybody up here thinks it's okay if a kid can go into the computer and look at porn in the computer library or on a device provided by the school, right? I assume there's ways to block that. Maybe there isn't. This is my question, though. When you say that sex ed shouldn't include inappropriate pictures, should that be up to, or who makes that call? If the school district, and by the way, I've seen these hearings, at least I've watched them on the news, the interest that they generate, should the school be in charge, the school district, after public hearings, be in charge of that curriculum, what's included and what's involved, or who's to make that call if it's not the school district that has a public hearing on their sex education program?
Well, first of all,
because it sounds like we're getting into a place where it's not the school district anymore. It is something out here, where people get to decide and protest, and then the school district needs to take not the direction from the elected school board members, but from some other entity or place or person.
Okay, first of all, the law states what we can and can't do for children. I did not bring this because of sex education. I still believe sex education has its place in the school. I did not say that, you might hear testifiers, and whether I asked them to come or didn't ask them to come, that's their opinion. The sex education, it's okay to do, but the parameters are already set. There are standards out there that are allowed. But if every school's going to do something different, that would be something else. I have another bill in education that could correct that. So, but that is,
Are there instances, though, Senator, where school districts aren't blocking this content from computers in
I will
schools?
definitely tell you there, yes.
You believe there is? I don't know. I'm not asking that
I know,
question
Senator
to
Lathrop,
corner
that
you.
there is, and, you know, I need this loophole filled so that I can make certain that the computers that we have at these schools block that sort of stuff, because there are
That's
two
fair.
different,
Parents
and
don't
that's
send
for
their kids
us.
thinking they're gonna be
That's for the
exposed to
state.
that.
You ask who should be taking care of that. That's for us, the state. Us state legislators need to know. If something's brought to us at the magnitude that it has, we need to be prepared to correct that so that we don't put a teacher in a harm's way, and we don't put a librarian.
So let me go back to sex ed. If a school district, for example, well, I'm not going to use one because then they're going to be in the
Okay, no,
spotlight, and I'm not
yeah.
trying to do that. If a school district decides that they want to have a sex ed program for high school students, junior year, we're going to have a high school sex ed program, and they subject that curriculum to input from the public, whatever that's going to look like. And by the way, I think most of these places allow you to opt out of it.
Correct.
But if they are going to subject that to a public hearing and let the elected school board decide what's an appropriate curriculum, if a school board chooses to have a sex ed curriculum that includes some imagery, whatever that might be, can they, under this bill, then be subject to prosecution for obscenity?
They certainly-
Or is that process insulate the school board from, not criticism, but from prosecution for obscenity?
Well, first of all, again, if it is inappropriate material, and to you it might not be inappropriate, to me it might be. So, but there has to be a standard set, and whether it's at the state level, that they set that standard, and the school boards all comply, because this might...
But we do have a standard.
We do have a standard, but you do have an opposition there, you know. I mean, maybe they bring in things that they didn't have cleared with the school boards.
So
I'm just saying,
can we amend the bill to say if the school board approves the curriculum, then it is outside of the purview of this bill?
but do you want every school board approving what they think is right, or do you want the same standard for all schools?
But I think that's where the opposition comes from, right? And I'm not trying to argue with you.
No.
Just trying to get some clarity. You know, I think it's obscenity that you know it when you see it. Well, you're right. It might not be obscene to one person, but obscene to another, and that's kind of clear from the hearing today. But what's the school board supposed to do?
Right, and again, I'm just, the K through 12, if the NSEA wants to protect the teachers, which that is definitely their job to do so, but we are not going to look for anyone unless they are absolutely out of line, and absolutely...
I get it.
So-
No, I certainly understand your purpose. I feel like we're having an education bill today.
Well, it is, and there'll be many more issues with this to follow, but we can't do anything unless we change that wording that we're going to protect the children in K through 12. Times have changed. So, does Patty have a question?
Yeah, Patty does have a question. I should say Senator Pansy Brooks. Let me get my phone awake.
Senator McKinney has one of the names.
Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator McKinney, go ahead.
Thank you. Senator Albright, what school district doesn't have some type of blocker? Because I work in a high school, I coach wrestling. When I was in high school, it was a lot of things you cannot access. And it was in some things you're like, why can't I access yahoo.com? So I'm just wondering, could you identify the school district that doesn't have that type of security already?
There are many schools that have I mean, when you go home and you have your Google search, I really didn't want to have to go here, but it's evident that I'm going to have to so that I can get my point across. There are schools that have computers that have different people that they can use. I think there's just 2 of them in the state of Nebraska. One I know positively for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that children, I'm going to give you an example, can go look up toys. And they're 4th graders. They have their little laptop home, and they want to look up a toy, the newest and greatest and fun toy. Within 2 clicks, they're on a porn site. Now, that is not our teachers that are asking them to go there. They're exploring, right? If you went to Etsy and you want to look up swimming suits, it'll take you within a few clicks to a porn site. Now, I can't change that until I change obscenity in this statute today. And what will come next year will be much greater. And it's unfortunate that we have to wait that long to do that. But we must change the obscenity loophole before I can take care of what we need to take care of with our computers that are in our schools. And this is...
I'm just saying that as a coach, I've been to high schools all across this state, and to access their online capabilities, there's a system in place, and I just can't see a student being able to access porn. I would be surprised to see it. If it's happening, I hope it's not, but I would be greatly surprised if it's possible.
Well, I would be happy to visit with you after this and give you some examples that will stop you in your tracks.
All right.
Yeah.
Senator Moorfield.
Yeah, I mean, so in that hypothetical you just gave, it sounds like some students found a loophole, correct?
And kids can't. They're a whole lot sharper than my age group anyway.
Yeah, I get that, but if there's a loophole, why don't we just contact the school district and say, hey, listen, they've been able to find a way around that. I don't think we need to create a law
But here's the deal, Senator Moorfield. There's no stopping what this company could be doing, and they're not. Okay, so you can ask for filters, you can ask for blockers, you can ask for that.
Wait, a company? I'm sorry, I'm not tracking. There's a company that is?
Well, the company that provides the computer system for our schools. So there are many, many aspects of this, but we can't, unless we change that. They could go look at Cosmopolitan magazine and go right into what they don't need to be reading or seeing at a young age, K through 12. Okay, so there's lots of examples out there.
So is the purpose of this law then to incentivize these companies that provide the blockers to be able to?
Not just that. Okay. There's so much more. I mean, we read in the paper all the time about school teachers that are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Those are the ones you're going to catch in this obscenity, changing this one word to K through 12 under that. Because there's already laws in place, but unless we get rid of that and say that we are going to protect K through 12, we can't change anything.
Okay, thank you.
I have 3 questions from Senator Pansy Brooks. Does obscenity include teaching from advanced physiology textbooks, including illustrated pictures of the naked human form?
No.
Does obscenity include teaching by touring a group of students through the Nebraska Capitol as part of Nebraska Legislature Day or the U.S. Capitol and viewing the art on the floor, including naked men and women?
No.
Here is a question that is more of a technical question, which is if you have a student who is doing a joint credit with the university, so a senior in high school is able to take college classes at the same time, and they are exposed to this at the university while they're a 12th grader going to get joint credit.
I think if a 12th grader was going to the university to get the credits and he is still in 12th grade, should not be exposing himself, or the college shouldn't expose him to it, even though it's some exploratory whatever for him to do. I don't think that's right.
You bring interesting bills to this committee.
Thank you.
They generate a great deal of discussion. This group likes to have those kind of discussions while we're here.
And I appreciate your time.
Thanks for being here today, and that will close our hearing on LB 282 and bring us to LB 517 and Senator Hunt. If you can wait just a moment, Senator Hunt, while we let the room.